Hey, Matthias. Good morning for me, and good evening for you.
Hey, good morning and good evening.
Yeah, how are you doing this week?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you? Hey, did you have a
Oh,
great New Year's and everything?
yeah, I definitely enjoyed having a few weeks off and not having to work too much. So it was nice. Hopefully the same for you.
Yeah, except for all the playing around with ChatGPT more than I maybe would care to admit. That was kind of a theme during my time off.
Yep. No, I'll hold some of my comments on the silly things that I have prompted it to do as well. But yeah, I think myself and I'm sure quite a few people in the chat have had their enjoyment of playing around with it and just seeing what kind of ridiculous answers it can give and useful to a degree. But yeah, this
Hey,
is the second time, sec second or third time you've been on.
second time.
Second, yeah, the other one, I know at least we did one back in September, October, right around then in the fall, initially, and glad to have you back on again for sure.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely,
It's
yeah, and I mean, I think thank you for the suggestion of this topic as well. I figure at some point it was going to happen. It's certainly being used across the industry, so I think it's a good topic that's both going to have as one of my old bosses way uh, back when I used to work at Power Pivot Pro, he always talked about blogs, Rob Colley, as either a slow burner or a hot topic, meaning like it's either going to be something that in like 3 to 6 months you get a ton of views or watches, and then it dies away, or it's something that it's very Googleable. So for the next 3 4 years, people are just going to keep coming across this, and I think this is going to be one of those both ones. It's very popular at the moment, but I do think people are going to continue to look at it until at least the next version of this platform comes out that will have more capabilities. So I think this will have a lot of
exactly.
standing power.
It's definite. I mean, ChatGPT or OpenAI is definitely a first mover on this area. I mean, I don't think any other company or tool has had this kind of adoption since I think ever. I think we've all seen those posts of how long it took Netflix and Facebook to get the same amount of users that ChatGPT got within 5 or 6 days.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
definitely very quick volume. Probably it's going to see some, I mean, it's probably peaked and it's probably going to be more of a, how would you say, realistic usage going forward.
Well, yeah, because I mean the biggest influx that everybody's using it for right now is just, ooh, like what can I like
What
recommend
fun
me a
stuff.
chili recipe, or like it's all this fun stuff, but for the
Make
most
me a
part,
poem.
yeah,
Make me a poem for a
yeah,
chili recipe using gummy berries. Yeah, gummy bears.
exactly,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's like a new toy. You give that to any kid, they're gonna play with it a lot, and then it's gonna sit in the closet after a while. And this one will still
And
continue to get used, but the people who use it are gonna use it for actual like work or business or other stuff. And a lot of those people who are just playing with it for the sake of playing with it, um,
yeah.
those will be the ones that die out. It's like the people in the gym on January 1st. All these people come in, and then after a few months they go away, and then the true common users are the ones that are left.
Yeah, and I'm still curious to find which of those users I'm going to be because I've had my what would you say, like peak usage, and now I feel like it's I put the toy aside for a bit, still use it, but I hope the next step is to really narrow down on those actual beneficial use cases because I think
Yep.
there are plenty to be talked
e-
about.
exactly, and I think we'll get a good job of being able to hopefully through the stream to dig into both what can be asked, but then actually looking at like, well, we've just asked it 10 questions. Which of these are actually practically use and provide quality outputs that are reliable or are accurate to a degree. I do think to start with, like we did last time, is for the individuals who are less familiar with you on the stream. Can you spend a little bit of time introducing yourself and who you are?
Yes, of course. So my name is Mathias Halkjær, and if you have no idea how to pronounce that last name, don't mind. I think nobody else can, unless they are from Denmark. I come from Denmark. I have been working with Power BI and Azure Synapse for quite some time. So at heart, I'm a data geek. But of course, I also was amazed of the capabilities of ChatGPT. So naturally, I wanted also to check if it would be useful within the area of Power BI. So at my day job, I work as a principal architect within data analytics for a company called Fellowmine, a cross-European company. And then when I'm not doing that, I do what I can to travel around to different conferences and user groups and just speak my fair share of data-related topics.
Excellent.
I think that's about it.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just responding to a couple of the messages in the chat about a few of these things. One was just asking about if Power BI stuff will be covered, and I'm mentioning that your demo will, I'm sure, cover quite a few different ways that within the BI space this can be discussed. But coming back to your introduction a little bit as well, I do want to mention that I think it's been nice to watch both your blog and everything else take off in the last couple of years. I think it was the first time we met at Power BI Next Step. That was also one of the first times, if not the first time, you had presented at like a large conference, wasn't it?
Yep, definitely.
How many times have
happened since?
Yeah, I mean, how many times you've presented at this point? Like, I mean, if you counted things like this, like online,
yeah,
I'm assuming at least what 10 to 20 times.
I lost count, to be honest, but I can say one thing for sure: it's at least 50.
Yeah. Okay, so like it's 1 to 2 a month then at that cadence, because that was about a year and a half ago.
I think when I look back at 2022, considering both online and in-person events, I did something around once per second week during the whole year, which itself is kind of a lot. But the problem is they tend to come in bulk. So sometimes there is so much going on.
Yep,
like this week.
Exactly. And to a degree, I think the first time you start doing it, you just I was a similar way where I was just saying yes to every every time I saw a conference, like submit, just sessionize, click resubmit.
Yeah. So someone actually told me when I started out that here's the game plan for kind of getting a foothold of this field. Just submit to everything. I mean, every event you'll find, everything that just resembles a chance to get, just submit to everything. And then maybe out of 10, 1 or 2 events will pick your session. And then you're good to go. So I did that. The problem is, and I have no idea how that happened, was the first 20 events I sent out, 16 of them accepted. So I'm like, I was at that point, like, I was new to the game. I didn't feel like saying no, so I just said yes to everything.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. So I've definitely had more experience with it. Not that exactly that eager to just do everything. But then again, 2023 just seems to be more of the same cadence.
I found that just to tie off this conversation, my preferred cadence, I think, at least for online, is about two a month, no more. Meaning like one every few weeks. If it's, I can scale it up to, like, if it's a talk I've done like at least 10 times, at that point I don't even have to prep. I know it off the back of my head. I can look at the document that morning for 5 to 10 minutes. I'm ready to go, and I can just pop in. But I feel like just anything more than like one a week or at that point, and then it throws off my rhythm of everything else that I'm doing. But like it's awesome. I'm glad to hear it's been as successful as it has, and I know we've managed to bump into each other twice now in Denmark, and actually, like, speaking of,
and once in SQLBits.
Once at SQLBits, and I believe I will, because I think you're helping host it, the Data Saturday in Copenhagen after SQL Bits. I'll be in the area with Yoast actually delivering a training, so I can definitely stop by Copenhagen if there's a chance to present at the Data Saturday there. So I could be back in Denmark again.
Sure.
Excellent.
I mean, the call for speakers is still open, so just
yeah. So I'll be submitting to that. But bringing us, I do see a few conversations that and questions that I've queued up. Once we start going through this, I think some of them will be naturally answered, such as can the ChatGPT replace the dashboard process and a few others. So I'll keep those queued up for you. As we get into certain topics, I'll bring them up as needed if they don't get answered. But I do think this would be a good opportunity for us to segue in and kind of start going over ChatGPT in general. I think maybe helping answer some people what it is, and then just going through the talk options today.
Yeah, I also noticed my camera here is not working with me. It's a bit blurry, so it's a good time to switch to the next presentation.
I have found that sometimes what helps is putting your hand and then like letting it kind of like refocus like that if it does the autofocus.
Yeah, I just
there you go.
Do that.
Yeah, now it's back.
Much better. Perfect. So yes, I tried out ChatGPT, and it was a fun tool. It was like you said, Reed, it was a fun new toy. But I also quickly found out that I actually, without even thinking about it, I started using it for some things. And then I used it for some other things, especially things within Power BI. And for some of the areas, I realized that I was just wasting my time because I would never get to a point where it would actually help me. But in other areas, it was immensely helpful, or at least saved me some time for doing some of the stuff. So naturally, I wanted to explore even more and try out the different use cases in Power BI. Where could we use it? Where couldn't we? And stuff like that. So I have a few I brought a few use cases and examples that we can try out. It's been a bit of a nerve-wracking session to prepare for, because if you give ChatGPT the same prompt as you gave it yesterday, it's not going to give you the same results. So I actually have no idea what we are going to be looking at when we start doing the actual demos, which is of course interesting and exciting, but also a bit worrisome. But anyway, so the presentation here, ChatGPT, fad or future. So before we go in and do some demos and look at actual use cases, let me just start by introducing shortly myself. So we already had the introduction, you know who I am and everything, but I should also mention that I'm working on this blog, fluxbi.com, where you would find a bunch of different topics around Power BI and Azure Synapse Analytics and the whole Microsoft data platform and intelligent data platform as a whole. Alongside me today, there will be sort of a different speaker, ChatGPT. Not exactly a person, but it resembles a person enough that it deserves to be on the speaker slide, if you ask me. Yeah, but I say, how about we just let ChatGPT introduce itself?
Yeah, I agree.
So I've written to ChatGPT, and I've asked it, just please introduce yourself, ChatGPT. And this.
Hello, I'm ChatGPT.
Oh.
A chatbot designed to assist users in generating human-like text responses. I'm powered by a state-of-the-art natural language processing system, which allows me to understand and respond to your inquiries and requests. I'm here to help you with anything you need. So please don't hesitate to ask me for assistance.
Thank you, ChatGPT. Yeah, it's pretty dope. It's here to help us with anything we need. I mean, and it even comes with the voice of Snoop Dogg. What's not to like?
Oh, I was just gonna say, is like before you actually see the name, I was like, can anybody guess who that was? Yeah.
Oh yes.
People are gonna ask like what the platform is. I think it's speechify.com that does that, right?
So I haven't dug into exactly what are good text-to-speech platforms. I just Googled it, and this was like the first hit. It is called Speechify. So speechify.com.
Just drop the link.
But again, it was the first on Google. I'm not necessarily recommended it or anything. I actually don't know anything about it. But it was there, and it was a fun gimmick. naturally, ChatGPT is a chatbot. It doesn't actually come with a text-to-voice system yet. But I, for one, am hoping for and waiting for a chance to maybe have a ChatGPT version that works more like Alexa or Siri, where we could actually talk to it. I think that would be actually very cool. But
just as a mention to that too, the like technically, even for a few years now, there's actually been ML models that you can give it, I think, only about an hour of audio recording of a person, and it can mimic it, because like that's what they do. It's just not publicly available yet, as to my understanding, where you can any average person can go in and create their own voice of themselves or something. Like Adobe has actually had that for about 4 years. There was a great podcast on it, but you have to basically get special permission to use it, partially because I imagine the dangers of
if you're recording the voice,
especially with deep fakes plus deep fake voices. If everybody could do that a lot more of the fake media stuff. But it's a really cool idea, and honestly, like if I can do YouTube shorts or other stuff like that where it doesn't have my camera, but I do a 60-second quick video tutorial where I can just type in, say X, Y, and Z, it records my voice, sounds exactly like that. That actually would save me a lot of time. So I could see a potential big business use case, even in just audio reproduction of a voice, as long as it doesn't get misused, which is, as you can imagine, very, very careful consideration to have.
Definitely. I think that's also one of the interesting discussions about everything related to AI and machine learning is all these ethic questions we never had to answer before, because you're explaining a very valid, very simple, very how do you say it, non-harmful use case. But there's, as you said, there's a lot of potential very harmful, very evil use cases for those technologies as well. And then there's a bunch of like gray area, just very, very weird, very like, how do we handle them? Imagine if you had like old recordings of your dead grandparent, you could actually send that into the AI and then chat with them, hear their voice again. That's kind of an eerie use case where I could see someone wanting to do that, but it's also like, should we?
I will actually say just a really quick anecdote on that. Like, we haven't talked about this prior, but there are therapies that, to help people with closure, do have them talk to the therapist who's role playing as their deceased spouse or something. So I think it could go either way. Yes, that could be creepy, but I think also at the same time, if used in a therapeutic method to help a person mentally get closure with maybe some unfinished conversation, that could potentially be helpful. But again, in very structured therapeutic, situations. But just as like a quick thought on that.
Yeah, exactly. So I have a few more slides, but I just wanted to show for people who have maybe not seen ChatGPT, ChatGPT at all yet, that currently it's a free service by OpenAI. It's kind of a free alpha, beta, whatever we call it. If you go to the webpage, up in the top, you will see a button to try out the ChatGPT, which would lead you to kind of this interface. Now they're working on full steam these days, and I was I've been worried the last few days, because actually 2 days ago I was not able to access ChatGPT at all, and even yesterday there were intermittent issues, and even today you were not able to access it, but I was. So they are working at capacity plus, and they're working on scaling up the systems, and I don't think anyone expected this kind of interest within the tool, but the tool is interesting, so it makes sense.
Exactly.
But anyway, you go there, you write some text. It's running like this big, massive pattern recognition engine, and it's going to give you an output that, within the realms of pattern recognitions, fit whatever you are sending as your prompt. And since it's trained to do conversation, this pattern matching output will sound like proper conversation that is an actual response to what we're asking for it. So we could actually start chatting with it. Don't even need to be about specific topics. We could ask it, I don't even know if this work. How are you? You're probably going to say that it's an AI and don't have feelings. That makes sense. Okay. So, okay. So you don't have feelings? We can ask you, what can it help us with? Maybe get a bit of pre-story. So we are a bunch of Power BI enthusiasts. What can you help us with? Oh, so it's telling us it can help us create reports and visualizations. It can help with creating queries and data analysis. Different methods to present our data, troubleshooting, documentation, tutorials, resources to learn and master Power BI. That's a pretty good start, I'd say.
I like that, and I actually had a fun question that Mathias, a prompt that I think you should ask it. So ask ChatGPT, what is better, Power BI or Tableau? I'm gonna guess it's not gonna answer because it doesn't like to do what's better and worse usually because it doesn't want to be political. But I'm curious to see what the output is. I've not actually asked it this question before.
Yeah,
see, yep, it takes the diplomatic route.
I mean, you could force it to be biased if you want to. I could have. I think we could force it to be biased. So
interesting.
Instead,
okay.
If I said, explain why Power BI is better, it may be still diplomatic, but I may be able to kind of push its. Yeah, it's still a bit reserved here. It can be argued that, but it accepts my logic and starts arguing for it. So there's definitely some filters. Also, I mean, this is not the most political topic in the world, but it's definitely going to be some filters around more sensitive questions, which I'm not going to try to stress test here on live stream. So it actually engages in conversation, or it seems to be engaging in conversation at least, which is the neat part, because we can kind of fine tune. We can say, for example, here it's telling us that this point about integration here, that it's one of the reasons Power BI is better than Tableau. I can actually tell it to do something with that. I can say, okay, please describe in detail bullet 1. Sometimes this works, sometimes it misunderstands. In detail, bullet 1.
Okay, so I was responding
so
to a couple things in the chat, but I like that. Yes, it does try to be diplomatic, but if you force its hand, so to speak, like, well, if you had to argue for this, what would it be?
Exactly. And I had a colleague that yesterday he told it that he asked it what was 2 + 2, and of course it said 4, but then he started telling it, no, that's wrong, it's actually 5. And first it wouldn't accept his answer, but after a few tries, he actually got it to tell that it was in fact 5. We can try it out quickly. So it's not fact based. It's not having any logic. It's pure pattern recognition. So we can kind of influence that pattern. I will also show you in one of the slides how we can build better prompts by knowing what to preface our questions with and stuff. But more on that later. So I say here, no, 2 + 2 is 5. And it's very apologetic. It's wrong.
But yeah, and there is a degree of it does understand the conversation history. I found this out as well. So there's been times where I give it certain prompts and it continues the conversation based off what I've asked it. I do like that it continues to give you additional answers.
It's actually very okay. I couldn't do it. I saw an example yesterday of a colleague who succeeded in it, but nope,
So
it's sticking to
this
the
is
truth.
actually, I was going to say, so part of this is, and I think this brings up how the engine is running. So,
Yep.
because this is a little good thing to understand. So Matthias is asking it, are we feeding it with our questions? Yes and no, to my understanding. So I believe I did ask it at
What
one
was the
point,
question?
are we feeding it our questions? Every time you ask a question, are we training the model? ChatGPT specifically. So
Yeah.
I believe yes and no. It's not instant, so it doesn't immediately learn and is better. But I did ask it at one point to respond to like a Power BI update that was from November, and it did mention that I think its window is like a year and a half old. Like I don't think it has the absolute current to the day data of the internet. It basically is retrieving an archive. It does learn off of the stuff that we're feeding it, but it's not instantaneous. The model doesn't instantly get better. I believe it's going into the back end to train the next version of the model, where this one's essentially fully baked to a degree.
It is, and this was like baked on primarily data from before 2022. So
Yes.
so there is going to be limitations, and no, it's not directly training the model, which is also why it feels so weird that it's actually doing conversations, because you'd think that it's learning from past questions here. It's actually not. It's just a matter of fact that the entire conversation is put into the prompt. Even though it seems like I'm only asking a new question here, it's actually taking the entire history and putting that into the model for the next answer, which is how it kind of can remember the conversation.
Exactly.
Because it's pattern matching. It doesn't remember anything. It doesn't do any arithmetics. It doesn't do any logic. It doesn't even do an if statement in there. I mean, it probably does behind the scenes, but it doesn't do any structured logic. It's all a big black box, really.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Microsoft uses a version of it in their measure suggestion in preview, and what's the GitHub? The GitHub Copilot uses. They both use a version of Code GPT. It's like Code GPT 2 or 3. Yeah, but it's from OpenAI. It's another one of their models. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. So yeah, we can chat with it. It will respond to conversation, and that's pretty neat. So exactly what's going on behind the scenes? I mean, I'm no AI expert, so I won't be able to tell you in full. But it's based on two concepts within AI. It's based on the concept of deep learning, and then it's based on something called a transformer network, which is an overarching architecture based on deep learning. So I actually try to explain it a bit more, because it can seem very almost confusing that we can write a question and then a computer code can actually start doing conversation with us without even thinking or without even doing any logic in it. It just answers, and it can answer complex coding questions, math questions, stuff like that. So how does it work? And I've said it before, it's pattern recognition. So let's just try to explore a bit of that pattern recognition very quickly, because I can see time is running. So let's say we had some symbol data here, just some bullets of orange and blue, and we had to predict which is which. First, we can use X as a parameter. So that's one of the axes, and it's going to do a poor job, because of course there's no way to, with only one data point, to predict anything from here. We can add another data point. That doesn't really help. But then we can do some feature engineering here and add a bit of complex different things, and it can actually start training on this data and come up with some patterns that enclose this well, the pattern of the actual what we're trying to achieve. So the pattern of our actual data. But that's fine. There's still a bit of an error here. You can see the error. The higher the number, the more of an error that's left. But that's fine. But things can be even more complex with like spiraling data. And we're still only working on 2 dimensions, an X and another X. It's called X1 and X2 here. It would be similar to X and Y. Yeah. So now it's struggling, because we're just giving a bunch of data, but it cannot really find that pattern just based on this data. But we can do something that is kind of mimicking the way the brain works. We can start introducing neurons. There's small like sub-calculations within the whole system. So we could add one, that doesn't really change much. Or we could add a bunch, and a bunch of different layers with a bunch of neurons. And suddenly we are adding complexity to the way that it can find patterns. And you can almost immediately see how the patterns of which it's trying to find become much more complex. And we can crank that up. We can crank that up, and it should actually start being able to come close to the reality of the data. It will never actually determine that this is a spiral form data, because it's just pattern finding, and it's just doing it with the complexity of the neurons it has. So this is 2 dimensions, like two dimensions of data points. But what if you add, and then that's where the hard thing comes. And with 2 dimensions and a bunch of like 6 layers with 6 neurons, that like 36 different neurons or parameters, well, it can come kind of close to predicting this 2D based data landscape. But language is much more complex than a bullet chart. Language has not 1 dimension, it has like so many dimensions of, I mean, each letter in a sentence is kind of its own dimension. It's just so complex that in order to handle that complexity with the same way of thinking, we have to they have to rely on a lot more neurons than 36. Yep. And that's actually what they are doing. So in the ChatGPT model, which in some way works similar to the demo I just did of a neural network, it has not 36, but it has 175 billions of these parameters or neurons.
It's pretty nuts. Like and you said black box for a reason. With any of these, you build it, but for the most part, the level of complexity multiplies by like logarithmically, and it just becomes insanely complex. And it either works or it doesn't. But you basically have to decide if you keep it or do you shoot it and restart from the from the beginning again.
And with 36 parameters, we were able to kind of find this pattern of this spiral shape within a 2D network of data. And the crazy thing is, if we just expand with more and more parameters, it's actually going to be able to find the patterns of human language and the patterns of programming and the patterns of code and math and everything contained within all these parameters, just simply because there are so many, and it has the training materials to fine tune them to exactly that material. Now, exactly. On top of this, and not to be too technical, because this is the part where even I don't fully understand it, there's a whole new modern architecture called transformer network that actually makes sure that each of these neurons have kind of an input from all the other words of its output that it's already done. And it's highly complex, but it's just, fine-tuned model, more polarization, as I think, and it makes it the whole thing works. So I've added some links here. We can probably add those to the YouTube clip after we're done. If anyone is curious about it, there's an explanation of what is the transformer network for anyone who wants to dig into that. So that was a bit about how it worked. And I need to start by saying that I don't know how it works. It has 175 billion parameters, and each one of them is doing something that not one person in the world actually understands why they're doing. So it's a big black box. It does something, and we need to learn how to work with it. And I feel like I've come up with a recipe that I believe usually works. Sometimes it doesn't, but this is my go-to that I use if I want to do a new prompt. So it's kind of, I was kind of inspired by the whole basic communication models of human communication, about having like a sender, a purpose, and a recipient. That's the basic information that we need for structuring some sort communication. And then I kind of realized what else do we need to add? So I think if we want to get a good result from ChatGPT, it actually works better if we tell ChatGPT what kind of sender it is. So we could say, you are an expert of data modeling in Power BI. And suddenly it will actually answer better along those lines because, again, it's pattern matching. And we kind of narrowed it down into that pattern by saying this. We can say we want a blog post. So that's the format. We can say, purpose of the blog post is to sell something. And that could be a fancy new dataset auto documenter tool. I wish I actually had such a thing. I think Datamark made one of those.
Mark and Chris Wagner both have a pretty good like report documenter tool. Yeah.
Yep. So the recipient would be experienced Power BI developers. And the last one is one that I typically also forget, the action. You actually need to tell it what to do. So I want a blog post. Sometimes it gets that and say, okay, you want a blog post, I'm going to give you a blog post. But it actually works better if we are explicit about that point. So write it for me. And I have a fun example because when I prepared this slide, I actually wrote it this way without even thinking about it. So I wrote, I'm an expert in data modeling in Power BI. I developed a new awesome tool for Power BI datasets. Please help me write a blog post to sell this tool to experienced Power BI developers. Can any of the audience guess why this didn't work out the way I wanted to based on the prompt? I mean, I'm helping by coloring some of the words, but maybe some of you have a guess.
Yeah, I'll see if anything comes up as their guess. I will pop that onto the screen.
Cool.
Yeah, so just as we're seeing if that pops up, some of them were asking if it's going to be paid at any point. My understanding with OpenAI is I don't think they've charged for any of their models because it's an open source platform. Other companies, do they?
Yeah,
not for personal use though, right?
ChatGPT is the first tool they made for personal use. All their other models. You can try them, you can use them in the sandbox.
That's what I meant, yeah.
But the moment you hit like a capacity limit, you're going to be asked if you want to do a consumption-based subscription. So you're going to pay per some sort of unit where you can fine-tune the model. Do you want it to run 5 times and pick the best choice and stuff like that? ChatGPT is harder because a lot of those fine-tuning is actually done by a machine learning model on top of a machine learning model, which then kind of tweaks these options for you. So I guess they need to invent a new business model. I would say it's unlikely that it keeps being free. It's probably more likely that it becomes free in a sense that it's integrated into some sort of search tool. Could be Google, it probably will be Bing since Microsoft own a lot of it. And then the business model could be classic ad business model. But again, this is pure speculation because there's only OpenAI are the ones who know and decide what they're going to do about it. Exactly. I honestly don't think they know yet because this interest that they've had, it's far more than I think they had predicted. So I think they're rethinking their business model. They've been a business-to-business company up until now. Most of their clients are like app developers or app companies.
Microsoft, you know,
Microsoft,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's like they build the engine, other people build the apps on top of the engine.
Yeah. So they've even been a B2B2B. Like it's a vendor who sells services to companies that sell services to either consumers or other businesses. But suddenly they had this huge interest from consumers all around the world. And what are they going to do about it? No one knows, but I think they're going to do something about it. So did anyone guess what was wrong with this prompt or what went wrong with this prompt? Because there's no right or wrong. There's patterns and there's output, and that output can be of varying quality. Did someone guess?
Yeah, I see a lot of other conversations just around paid versus free, and you are the product if you are not paying. No guesses that I actually saw. So
the thing is that
go ahead.
it's actually, again, it's not like it has a personality, but if it had, it's a bit literal in the way it understands what we're telling it. So when I say it should help me write a blog post, it doesn't write it for me. It starts helping me write it. So yeah, sure, I'll help you. Here is something you may want to consider, and maybe you should start by talking about this, and maybe you should talk about this after. It actually starts becoming really helpful and really encouraging, which is what I asked it to do, but it's not what I wanted it to do.
Yep.
So we need to be a bit explicit about what we want from it. So I don't want it to help me write a blog post. I want it to write a blog post for me. And if I ask it that instead, it's going to give me a completely different answer, because now I understand, okay, here is a blog post. And it will start going here. Okay, are you tired of spending hours manually documenting your Power BI data set? And then it starts writing a blog post.
You can even give it a prompt to say, use relevant hashtags and emojis, and it will actually sprinkle some of those in there. It will put like, hashtag Microsoft, hashtag data platform, stuff like that. So it's really, really robust.
Yep, definitely is. One thing I haven't been able to have it do is to do, like, you know how on LinkedIn you would do a bit of extra spacing to make it more easily readable on phone when you're scrolling. That format, which tends to be something everyone is doing on LinkedIn, it kind of never grasped that. And for what reason, I don't know, but it's hard to get it to write a LinkedIn post in the sense that it looks like something, anything else on LinkedIn. It could be that it's a new trend. I actually don't remember if we wrote like that a year ago.
I think it's a more recent trend for sure.
It could be. Great. So, a bit short of time, but I brought some use cases here, which is what I tested it for. So I tested it for data loading, I tested it for data modeling, for report and viz design, coding, documentation, project planning, personal growth, and well, fun. And let's skip the fun bit. We've had our fun with it. So let's just look at the other ones. So for data load. Actually, let's move away from the presentation and start looking at the ChatGPT itself. Oops. There you go. So for data load. So I've tried out asking it some data load related questions, and to avoid you guys waiting for my slow typing speed, I'll just copy paste all these prompts. So as I said earlier, I tried these out. I think they gave a neat response, but since it's an AI model, it's not going to give me the same response this time. So there's a bit of uncertainty here, but I'm telling it here, world-renowned Power BI expert. I need advice on how to load data from our ERP system. And I'm trying to push it away from the standard, just give me an answer, into ask me what information you need to advise me. So this is a typical client consulting way of talking. So here, yeah, it's starting asking me questions like, what ERP system are we using? Where is the data stored? Can we export it, such as CSV file, Excel, and stuff like that? That's pretty good questions, actually. Let's start answering some of the questions and see if it can start giving us recommendations. So I'll just answer some of them. So we are using, actually, I'm just going to sell the data is stored on Azure SQL. I have access. How do I load it into Power BI? Now, I said earlier that you needed, it was a good idea to these like preface text, like tell it which kind of sender it is, what we want from it, stuff like that. But I already did that once, and it's going to remember the conversation. So going forward, I can kind of rely on it remembering who it is in this, which role it's supposed to take, and I can be a bit more straightforward, just saying what I want from it. It also tends to respond well to questions because those kind of have a clear input-output kind of pattern thing. So let's see if it can help us load data into Power BI.
It always likes to think sometimes too.
It does.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, I can get Power BI ready and see if it actually will help us. Don't need this.
It's actually taking its time to think a little bit.
Yeah, sometimes it does that. We can make a new chat. And this is going to be a bit weird, but oh wait, error. I can resubmit. Great. Okay, so data is stored in Azure SQL, and I can use the built-in Azure SQL database connector. That's good. So I go to Power BI Desktop, click the Get Data, SQL Server dialog. I need the server here, so I can minimize this. So go to the desktop, get data, insert the server name, and then basically authenticate and choose import or direct query. Well, there's nothing new about that, but it's pretty cool that a piece of pattern recognition
Exactly.
program can tell us actual instructions for performing a task. So I'll try to do it. And of course, this is going to work. I don't think we have any viewers here on the channel who didn't already know how to do this. But let's just say we're fetching some piece of data. It could be internet sales data. There you go. And then we transform the data. So of course, Power BI is going to do what Power BI does and just generate a piece of code for us. But what if I told it that these informations? What if I didn't want to use the Power BI UI? Could I have it write the M code for me? You can try.
You could. I'll be curious to see what some of your results are.
So the server is this one. The data, we can call it DB, is this one. Also to see how it handles acronyms and stuff like that. And the table is this one. Please write the Power Query M code to load this data into Power. So I've learned over some trial and error that it doesn't quite get if we write just M code. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But if we add Power Query, it's usually better.
Yeah, agreed.
Coolio. Sometimes it fixes it to change the text. Sometimes you need to redo the conversation when it starts acting up. I think we need to do that. So that's a bit annoying, but you're a Power BI expert. I need advice on how to load this data into Power BI.
There we go.
I'm really interested with it. And it has a code format, so it actually offers code.
I haven't done code in a few weeks. Previously, when it gave me M code, it didn't actually put it into a code block. It gave me text M code. I mean, I haven't done it since December, but I tested for funsies, DAX, and Power M code.
Yep. Sometimes it does that, and I haven't found the right keyword to force it to use a code block. Maybe just write code block. I don't know if that helps. Let's see if it works. So it offered a piece of M code with a native query with a select star. That's not necessarily best practice, which, I mean, it's really not. And some of the columns has errors because it picked the wrong data type, maybe? No? Because they're stored as integers. All right. So again, it doesn't actually understand the data. It kind of just guessed some column names and it guessed the data types.
Arguably, it also doesn't technically understand the code either. There is no data, there is no validation to see if a function exists. There is no validation to see if a command exists in the code. I asked it at one point to write me M code to extract bookmark filters from the report.json file that's contained inside of a PBX, and it did actually write M code to do that, but it used functions that just don't exist at all in M code. So it is just a text generator. It formats it like code, but yeah, it's not running it against any kind of code validations. Like it definitely does not have access. Go ahead.
Yeah, it doesn't have any intelligence. I mean, it is one big pattern recognition. I mean, you put the entire text as one big input, and then yes, it generates one word at a time to make a structured sentence, but it doesn't do any sort of validation or logic checks along the way. It doesn't know if it's wrong or if it's right, or if it's partially wrong or partially right, or to some extent, it doesn't know anything actually. It just takes an input, gives us an output. It doesn't think.
Exactly. And Mathias actually had a question of which code is reported best. Is it Microsoft related codes? They're not biased towards Microsoft. Like, yes, this does run on Azure servers, but this is an open source platform. So the quality of the code output is the quality of the code inputs. So DAX and Power Query have a lot less blog posts online than, say, Python or Java or C#. There's a lot more people who talk about that on Stack Overflow because that's where its sources comes from. It's people who've written articles and the code that exists on the internet. So better and worse is going to be a cross-section of the amount of information on the internet talking about that code, and also the amount of information online that's good code. So both of those intersected would be my guess of the quality of the code answers that are going to be provided by this tool.
And in that respect, it's kind of semi-cheating to use AdventureWorks because that exact database is going to have a lot more content online with it in it. So it could be offering us higher quality because we're using that exact database. I don't know. But in my experience, it's much better at SQL and Python than anything else. And I think that's exactly what your point was, Reed. There's so much more written content about those languages.
Exactly.
Just as a quick... SQL has 20 years of content behind it.
Exactly. Just as a quick mention, because we don't get them often, I got a donation for the content that we're doing. So thanks to Studying for providing that.
Yeah, thanks. Great. So it can help us write code. It doesn't do it well, and it doesn't understand anything. So therefore, also it doesn't understand best practice. For example, here using a native query in your step 1 and doing a select star. Well, that's just going to disable query folding from the very first step.
Rafal actually had a great mention about like how to use this with coding. Is you can paste the code and error you give and ask it to help fix and explain it. So I think for learning code, not necessarily writing code for you, but helping to understand and learn code depending on which language, that is, I think, a good practical use case to better understand it. You think of it as like it's a helper tool.
Yeah, but even, I mean, we have the warning here. This is very clear what the error is here. But even then, we don't even need the error because it's good at pattern matching. I mean, that's its superpower. So I can write here. I have this code. it's making an error, or it has an error. Please help me identify it. Again, don't ask it to help, because it's just going to give me steps of how I should troubleshoot that. So please identify, explain the error to me. So it starts explaining what it's doing. Yes, that's not exactly what I want. There, the problem. The error is in the following lines. It should be, yep. Here you go. So even not knowing the error, it can still help me fix my code and find the potential problems with it. I've heard other examples of people asking it to give it variations of the same code if they want to explore if there's better ways of doing what they're doing. It also is really good at that. Again, because it takes a very structured output and finds something that are similar to that output. So it gives me here the correct query. I can copy it and paste it back. But as you see here, it's actually made other changes in the final query than just the error. It's actually also returned this to be a one with a native query in the first step. So it's not perfect. It's actually, it has a lot of errors, and you need to be very careful about trusting anything you get from ChatGPT, because it doesn't think, so you need to think for it. Yep. Wait, time is running. So
like I said, we have a soft time on 10, so we can continue through some other examples, because I am curious about other places where this can be useful. It certainly from your slides, besides just like code and everything.
So let's try out data modeling. This is something I've been very sometimes I've done successfully with it. Sometimes it's just not working well. So we'll try. So now I'm telling it it's a hot shot at Power BI data modeling. We need to design a data model from scratch. Again, I'll add some more information. So I say here that the purpose is to understand customer churn. I have located these tables. Sales, customer, date. And then I'm asking it here if it thinks that there are other tables I should look out for in my data. Maybe it has some ideas of what would fit together with these tables for the purpose of analyzing customer churn. If you ask me, I think this is a big ask. I mean, this is not an easy thing to answer, and requires a lot of business knowledge and stuff like that if you were to answer it from a human point of view. But again, it's pattern matching, so it kind of guesses very close to usable thing often. Okay, so for customer churn, it says something about the orders placed by the customer, date, and which products is purchased. That makes sense. I mean, that the order and the information on the order is relevant to if customers are leaving us. Address, yes. Geography, makes sense. Marketing campaign, stuff like that, definitely as well. Customer segment, very, very, very applicable, and product, of course, also applicable. And it then starts giving me tips of what I should do when I have identified the tables. So it's trying to be helpful, sometimes eagerly trying to do so. Okay, so I say here I found these tables. I found products, I found sales territory, and a sales territory and a salesperson table. So let's start building a data model. So my problem is I don't really like building a data model over text, and ChatGPT can only do text. I cannot really have it work in my Power BI model, but I can have it invent new things. For example, can you invent a JSON-based format to communicate about a data model? I can try, and it usually does that very well actually. So it starts designing some sort of metadata scheme about for the table here. It says internet sales and starts defining the columns and types and primary key, foreign keys, stuff like that. Again, it doesn't have any thinking. It doesn't have any intelligence. So for it to replicate proper foreign ID on customer ID for a customer column, I think that's very cool.
And I want to continue just every time you say that, I almost want to just like take a moment to like I call attention to it does not have intelligence. Like that's a big thing to say. It does not know anything from anything else. It is simply a pattern tool. Yeah,
Yes.
it is
Yes.
creating patterns based off of data it's fed. So like
It's creating the
often
illusion
the
of
patterns are
intelligence.
right or very close to being right, but that's that like, and I just want to continue to hone in on that to cautionary tale stuff, because when it's right it's great, but when it's wrong it's hard to tell it's wrong until you actually try to use the code or something and you realize, oh, this function doesn't exist, but it did its best, because you can tell it use this function in DAX to write me this, and now it thinks that function exists, so it'll write you code with that function name.
And do you know why it's so hard to tell that it's being wrong, even for us as experts?
Well,
You
in
can
this,
have it
Go ahead.
generate a blog post. No, but in general, you can have it generate a blog post. And because it's a pattern matching engine, it will make a pattern that seems right, even to even to our human brain. So when we skim it, everything is going to seem like, well, yeah, those seems like logical arguments. But then we start using our do you know about the two thinking systems for the brain, like system 1 and system 2? Then there's like the responsive thinking, and then there's the actual deep thinking. And when we start actually think about what is writing, that's where we notice the problems with it. But when we skim and we just glance over something, it just seems so right. Very similar to when AI is generating all these images, where suddenly you notice that they have 6 fingers or 7 fingers and stuff like that. It's kind of similar. It will have errors, and we need to use our deeper thinking to spot those errors, because it's actually made to create this illusion of something that looks right.
Exactly.
But anyways, it has now created a metadata scheme here. Sometimes it stopped midways because it's actually just running out of space for the.
And it even will output a table format table if you ask it to return, like, give me a 100-row table for fact sales with date and segment. And yeah, because it doesn't give you too many rows if you specify otherwise. But yeah, you like give me 100 rows of a fact table with sales by date, customer, and country. It will give you columns for each.
Yeah, but that's the thing. We just define tables with it. So maybe it understands product table now having these columns.
I will honestly be using I have a couple of times. So if I need new data for like a video that I'm recording for this channel, and you know, I want, like, I need a new dimension table, rather than going and typing it out myself in and it's giving you JSON probably because of your prior prompt. But I've copy and pasted a couple of just, you know, empty data sets. That's been really, really useful for this.
One limitation is when it's doing a thing, there's no way to stop. You
reload the page basically. If you realize I don't want this, I just refresh the entire page and then I just start new.
Yeah, I am careful about doing that because the capacity thing.
Yep.
Now,
I was going to say, just for sake of time, was there any? I do want to talk a little bit about maybe reporting from the front end as well. So, is there anything left that you'd like to cover up on some examples about data modeling before we maybe polish off as well with some more visualization and reporting, which is, I would say, more art than science, which I'm curious to see how this will handle.
Yes. So I just want to add that we have this model here. I'm not going to show you that it can do it, but it kind of, again, it feels like it understands the model. So I could tell it that on the customer table, please add a column called something else, or please change the data type of something, and it will actually just update the model. So again, because it's taking the entire chat history, it has the illusion of having a short-term memory that you can then make changes to between each chat prompt. Yep. Okay, good question. The artsy thing. So I've been trying to use it for designing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually difficult because first of all, having to come up with a language for communicating a data model that is kind of simple in respect to coming up with a structured language for communicating something like dashboard design. So I've tried. I just started asking it, please design a great layout for me and see what it would offer back. So this is sustainability data to help upper management make better decisions and drive their behavior. And it's going to start adding suggestions of what we should design. But I'm running into the problem that you mentioned, Reid, that it's being very almost academic about it. It's actually not telling me much about how it should look or how it should feel or how it should be placed on the page. It's more like, so this is what you should cover. It almost becomes an outline more than a design.
Yep.
Or it does. So I have tried to force it to be more specific on the design elements, but I need to wait for it to finish before I can ask it. So stuff like, okay, please advise on visualization choice at least then.
I'm also, yeah,
Wow.
exactly. This is actually giving you a pretty good lengthy one. Yep.
Yes. Oh, great. So we have this data, and it's going to suggest us a bar chart. And it should also suggest us what to put on the axis and legend. Colors to differentiate products and categories. Yeah, that makes sense. Another way, stack bar chart. We could show breakdown. Yeah, that makes sense. Or a scatter plot. Relation between unit of production and the emissions. Yeah. But you see, it was more of a logical interpretation more than a visual one. It didn't explain which told the best data story. It was more like these visuals would contain this kind of data in a logical manner.
So I think I have from the report layer, I have a good segue for this. So you've managed to provide a lot of descriptions on how to write this, and I've been definitely browsing the Reddit on or the subreddit for ChatGPT, and they had a great example of actually how to use ChatGPT to write an entire book. So I did one on report design and layering. So I'm actually gonna segue over to this one.
Yeah.
So actually, I did that entirely. I actually wrote an entire ChatGPT book based, or a Power BI book based on ChatGPT on reporting, visualizations, and design. I'll go into the book in a second, but essentially what you can do is you can ask it, write me a book with a table of contents. You get a table of content list. So I did that, and I actually got all of these chapters, and then for each one, like introduction to Power BI and design, list me the modules or list me the topics. You'll get a series of topics. And then from there, you can ask expand upon topic X. And it's a lot of copying and pasting. It took me probably about half a day to also, I had to put in table of contents, but I got approximately, let's see, 43 pages worth of information in there. And I've done nothing in here to modify the text. The only thing I've done is formatted a bit, but I went through and did a thorough review. And I won't go into too much detail. This is a free thing to download. It was a fun project to do. But I made a lot of footnotes in here. So as an example, there's a section in here. We can see footnote number 2. I'm going to zoom into this a little bit. Where I believe right here, where Power Query, it says it can create calculated fields and measures. It does not do that. That is DAX in the model. So it can be right a lot of the time, like connected data sources, use the get data feature, correct. It opens the query editor, correct. You can select the data source, you can import data. It also provides tools for shaping, such as errors. All of that is correct up until this part. So I went through, because I want this to be a cautionary tale. Like, it can write you so much information on how to create visuals, design, and reports. I encourage anyone, I'll drop the link in a minute to go check this out. But I added a footnote on all these pages, and I probably have about 50 footnotes throughout the report that talks about either context. This doesn't make sense without an explanation. I have inaccurate and I have incorrect. Those are the different ones that I try to put into here. So 3 different categories of footnotes to help explain the limitations of using a tool like this. So it's incredibly useful. I even actually generated an image using Midjourney. Thank you for the link to that one. My actual prompt was, I want a captain with a spaceship captain with a visualization on his computer screen overlooking like a few suns with a cat knocking over a coffee cup on his desk. I think the amazing part is it turned the captain into a cat instead of actually having a cat on his desk. So
and what about
I thought,
the two-handle bug?
Exactly. So yeah, it's super fun, but I'm very adamant to make sure this is for educational purposes only. And even the description in here, which was written entirely by ChatGPT, the preface talks about the cautioning readers to just be mindful of this. But it was a fun project to do, and I wrote a whole book in about a half a day. So the link in here is on my site, and I'll drop that to that. But it's fun to see the possibilities of what can be done with ChatGPT for sure.
Yeah,
I'm going to go back to your.
No, but I think actually we covered. I brought more examples. But we're also running a bit long on a bit short on time, and people shouldn't be waiting for the rest. So I'll just do a quick wrap up of my learnings for the rest of the topics. So I actually think that ChatGPT runs a lot better when we talk about writing, like you're saying here with the book. So something like documentation, something for outlining project plans, something for asking you to maybe do a 5-year plan for your career development, anything that is more something you would chat with people about, it's going to be better at that. But also for coding, troubleshooting code, definitely, definitely a good tool for that. Definitely.
Yep, and it's better at hard skills. So at least as far as the Power BI stuff that I found, it's great for helping to learn code a little bit or understanding maybe some of those back-end things. When you start talking about front-end product features, I've found that a lot of the UI stuff it was very wrong on. Like to change the color theme, go to File and Options and go to the theme setting. There's no theme setting in the option menu. You have to go to the View tab. Like, so all of those little things that are more on where things are found, tons of inaccuracies or incorrect things related to that stuff. So I feel like the more of the front-end UI related stuff and things that maybe rely upon interface, it has a harder time with. And then otherwise, it's just very light and fluffy when it comes to, you should use a bar chart for categories and a column chart for time, or a line chart for time dimensions. It's a lot of it's a 101 stuff.
It told me to go to the permissions tab in Power BI to add object level security. And for one that knows about that can only be done in Tableau Editor. But it just assumed you could do this in Power BI.
Yeah, exactly. So I love the potential of it. And honestly, I mean, the number one thing that I use it for me as a business is it's helpful with data modeling, but writing emails and polishing them up. If I have to send an email to a customer that is 2 weeks late on their invoice and I just want to make sure it lands as politely as possible, you can say, please rewrite this to be polite. Copy, paste, quote, it tweaks it for you. I think as I saw one of your prompts in there is, I've had it rewrite my bio a little bit to make it a bit more polished. I've had it help me rewrite a presentation topic. So I already had the 500 character topic to submit to Sessionize for a conference. Polish this up. You can just even say that. It just makes it read a little bit better. So
so this two thing is just very well for me as well. Is sometimes when you need to get started with something, it could be something you're writing, it could be a blog, it could be a session for a speak, it could be some documentation, and that blank page is just a bit too intimidating. Well, have it make the first draft, take that draft, and then start from there. It's a very good way to kind of get over that blank page kind of thing. And secondly, I've called it this before, and I'll stand by it again. I think it's the world's best rubber duck. You know about rubber duck debugging? There's this whole idea that if you have a rubber duck at your desk and you're stuck with a problem, that rubber duck is going to be almost as good as talking to a colleague, because just the fact that you have to think about what questions to ask this nonsense rubber duck actually helps you think about the problem. So having to structure your thinking about how do I ask it to ChatGPT the best way, most often will give you the answer before you even hit that enter button. But the difference here is, compared to a rubber duck sitting on your desk, is that ChatGPT will actually give you a response. So you have this personal AI that can help you with all your problems, as long as you can structure them logically and explain them in a very explicit manner on text. So yeah.
Yes, and it's both with the data that is provided to ChatGPT to give you answers and the questions. You know the term garbage in, garbage out as well.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's, unfortunately, it's, what's available on the internet is going to reflect what it can answer. So like, go back to that idea is, it's a cross section of, it gets better with the more data. It's able to provide more robust answers. I want to be very specific on my wording. The more data it's fed, but also the quality of the data will determine its output. Same with your questions. More versus less. If you just ask a human, tell me A versus B, very simply, it's consult and answer, it depends. As long as I give it more prompts and context, who I am, where I'm going, what the situation is,
it will answer better.
It will be able to give a more refined answer for you.
Yep. And I think actually we should give a slight tale of caution, in the sense that it will be wrong a lot of the time. I mean, it will. So combining that with expertise within a field, that's a kind of a perfect match, because I can do the quality checks. I can filter out what makes sense and what doesn't.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
If a new grad or a junior or something like that were using this tool and then blindly trusted what they get or didn't know what to look for, that could easily turn into nonsense being put into documentation or into actual code or stuff like that. So I think there's a bit of it's probably more helpful the more you already know within a given field.
Yeah, what's the knowing just enough to be dangerous kind of a situation. But yes, I for people learning something, I think I would say be more cautious. Yeah. Be extra cautious. By the time you know right and wrong from a platform, it can help you learn a little bit more. Like,
exactly.
It's like using the DAX debugger and tabular editor. But if you're just like 101 introduction to Power BI, that's not the tool I would go to use. Because, and again, if you go download the book, you can see how many inaccuracies it had on describing both the back end and front end of Power BI and things related to that.
Yeah, it is going to be wrong a lot of the time. Yep. But every time it's not wrong, it helps it and it saves us time. So I think that's the beauty of it.
I do think the number, and my biggest takeaway is, like, I will throw money at, because I use Grammarly for my emails. If there is if there's a ChatGPT plugin for Outlook where you can just click a button and let's assume you have a couple of sliders on like politeness, sellability, like things like that, to maybe adjust how it wants you to rewrite it. If you can just reconfigure that, have a couple of predefined presets to say write it versus A, B, or C, and you can do that in Outlook emails, I would happily pay money for that, just because that's the number one, I think, use case for it today. That's fairly safe to use. Just polish up my emails. I don't want to have to copy and paste between browsers constantly. So I would love to see that, and I'm sure someone's going to make a plugin for that at some point, and I will 100% sign up from day one for a Grammarly replacement. Or if Grammarly just starts to use it, I think they're going to get a lot more subscribers.
Definitely.
Excellent. Cool. As we wrap up, there was any questions remaining, drop them in now. I think we managed to answer quite a bit through those, but are there any closing comments or any key takeaways that you want to mention as we finish up for the day?
No, I think Yes, I think we should be cautious about this tool because it has a lot of flaws. But I also hear a lot of people being overly resistant towards it. And I think a lot of these arguments I'm hearing is like, well, if we use this tool, if young people use this tool, they will stop practicing and training their critical thinking and stuff like that. A lot of these arguments are giving me flashback to the time when Wikipedia started becoming a thing. And from that, knowing how that turned out, it's just like we need to use the tool the right way. I think that's the big takeaway here. It's a new tool. None of us know exactly how to use it or how not to use it. It's going to make errors. It's going to gives us ambiguous stuff. It's probably going to give us wrong stuff, but also offensive stuff. And we need to learn how to prompt it best. We need to learn how to do quality checks on the output it gives us, and we need to learn what are the right use cases for the tool going forward. And I don't think that's something we learn the next week or the next month, probably not the next year. But when we look back in 10 years to when ChatGPT started and when chatbots started becoming a thing, I think we'll look back to it in the same sense we do at Wikipedia now. It's not that important anymore, but it's a lot more useful than it was to begin with.
Yep. And with anything in information, as technology progresses, the tech comes first, dialing in the regulations and anything else to keep it safe and prevent misuse comes second, because we are the sandbox to test a lot of this stuff, you would agree, and figuring out how humans use and misuse things.
Yep, totally.
Excellent.
So I think that's a good, it's the next Wikipedia, but different.
I'm just reading some of the comments. Donald apparently caught a lot of this while he was at the gym, so thanks for tuning in on the stream while you were working out. But this was great. I think we had a peak of about 79 to 80 streams today, tuning in live. So very popular topic for sure. And I'm guessing this will get a lot of rewatches as well. But everyone, thanks for tuning in on your Tuesday morning, afternoon, evening, and I'm guessing somewhere middle of the night as well for a few individuals. And for you, thanks for tuning in on your Tuesday night. This has been fantastic. I'm sure I'll have you back on again at some point for another fun topic.
I look forward to it.
Excellent. Well, everyone, then, thanks for tuning in today. I will then otherwise see you on my stream on Friday, and then enjoy the rest of your day, evening, and night.
Yeah, have a great day.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for watching. Please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. And if you want to help support this channel, take a look at our channel memberships or our merchandise store for cool swag. And last but not least, please consider sharing this video on your social media platform of choice to help our channel grow. So, until next time.